Imagine a young boy born to a modest farming family whose destiny took him from rural simplicity to unimaginable wealth and influence. This is the journey of John D. Rockefeller, a man who would one day control nearly all of America's oil supply, defining an era of power and prosperity. Ruthless in his business pursuits, yet equally driven to uplift society, Rockefeller stands as one of history's most enigmatic figures. Was he the ultimate industrial titan, a philanthropic hero, or a figure shrouded in moral ambiguity? On July 8, 1839, in the small rural town of Richford, New York, John Davison Rockefeller was born into a world of simplicity and scarcity. His family was of modest means, far removed from the incredible wealth and influence. John was the second of 6 children, born to William Avery Rockefeller, a struggling farmer and traveling salesman, and Eliza Davison Rockefeller, a dedicated homemaker. Life in Richford was challenging, providing a mix of love, labor, and hardship that shaped John's ambitions. John's early responsibilities reflected the realities of his environment. From a young age, he helped with household chores, tended the farm animals, and worked on the family farm. These experiences taught John valuable lessons about discipline and hard work, sparking his desire to rise above his circumstances. His father, William Avery Rockefeller, widely known as the Big Bill, was a man of many contradictions. He was a traveling salesman, a self-proclaimed botanic physician who sold patent medicines, many of which were little more than snake oil. Big Bill was charming, persuasive, and always seemed to have a scheme in mind. While some saw him as a brilliant opportunist, others viewed him as a fraud. Big Bill taught young John valuable lessons about people, persuasion, and the art of negotiation. John closely observed his father's charisma, learning the importance of confidence and charm. However, William's unpredictability also meant that the Rockefeller family lived in a state of uncertainty, with financial stability always just out of reach. This instability left a lasting impression on John, teaching him both what to emulate and what to avoid. Unlike her husband, Eliza Davison Rockefeller was the stabilizing force in John's life. She was strict, deeply religious, and devoted entirely to her family. Where Big Bill was reckless, Eliza was prudent and disciplined. She raised her children with a strong moral compass, teaching them the values of honesty, hard work, and above all, thrift. Eliza was the one who taught John to keep meticulous records. From a young age, he was expected to write down every expense, no matter how small. This practice became a lifelong habit for John. The ledger would become his constant companion, a symbol of his commitment to discipline and accountability. While his father's lessons involved risk, Eliza's influence instilled caution and care, providing a balance to Big Bill's chaotic nature. John's early fascination with numbers became evident as he grew older. Encouraged by his mother, he took on small projects to earn money. Whether it was raising turkeys, selling extra produce from the farm, or lending small amounts of the money at interest to neighbors, John treated every endeavor with seriousness. He loved the feeling of earning, saving, and most importantly, recording every transaction. His ledger was where he noted each penny earned and each penny spent, reflecting his growing interest in finance. These lessons taught him more than just arithmetic. They taught him discipline, the value of saving, and the power of compound interest. John realized that every dollar could be put to work, every cent leveraged to build something greater. This early training in financial discipline proved invaluable as he ventured into the business world. As John entered his teenage years, his ambitions started to grow. The quiet town of Richford no longer seemed big enough for his dreams. He saw his father's daring exploits and his mother's careful stewardship, and knew his future lay beyond the farm. John started to dream of cities filled with opportunities, industries that could transform lives, and a future where he could rise above his family's humble circumstances. At the age of 16, John left Richford and moved to Cleveland, Ohio, in search of better opportunities. Life in the city was a stark contrast to the rural simplicity he had known. The bustling streets of Cleveland were filled with young men like John, all competing for the same low-paying jobs. With no connections or formal education, John started at the bottom of the workforce hierarchy, but refused to give up. John knocked on door after door, visiting every business that might be hiring. He faced rejection after rejection, but his persistence paid off when he finally secured a job as an assistant bookkeeper. The pay was meager, but the opportunity was invaluable. John threw himself into his work, learning everything he could about accounting, finance, and business operations. He worked long hours, often staying late to study the ledgers and understand the intricacies of the business. Despite the hardships of his early years in Cleveland, John saw every challenge as an opportunity. He knew that to succeed, he needed to be more than just a hard worker. He needed to be smart, strategic, and always looking for ways to improve. He started networking with traders and businessmen, asking questions and learning from their experiences. He observed the habits of successful people, noting what worked and what didn't. In 1859, John saw an opportunity to go beyond bookkeeping. He partnered with a merchant named Morris Clark to start a produce commission business. The venture involved buying and selling goods on behalf of farmers, facilitating the flow of agricultural products from rural areas to urban markets. John took on the responsibility of managing the finances, while Clark handled the buying and selling. The produce commission business was a pivotal experience for John. It taught him how to assess market demand, negotiate deals, and manage supply chains. The business thrived under their careful management, and John quickly demonstrated his skill in identifying inefficiencies and streamlining processes. He was meticulous in tracking expenses and finding ways to cut costs, which maximized their profit margins. Through this venture, John also gained exposure to the world of credit and finance. He learned how to leverage credit to expand their operations, buying larger quantities of produce and negotiating favorable terms with suppliers and buyers. The discovery of oil in Pennsylvania in the early 1860s presented an opportunity that John could not ignore. To better understand the industry, John made several trips to Pennsylvania, where he observed the chaotic boom of drilling operations and networked with key players. The oil industry was in its infancy, filled with both promise and chaos. Most people saw only the potential for quick riches, driven by the boom of oil wells. But John saw something different: inefficiencies, wasted resources, and the potential for organization and refinement. He understood that the true value lay not in crude oil itself, but in refining it into something useful. In 1863, John partnered with a group of investors to build a refinery in Cleveland, Ohio. Despite the oil boom being concentrated in Pennsylvania, Cleveland's location offered strategic advantages. It was close to the oil fields and had strong railroad connections, allowing refined products to be distributed efficiently. John had no direct experience in refining, but he sought out experts. He partnered with Samuel Andrews, a chemist whose practical knowledge of refining complemented John's business acumen. John had realized that the refining process was where stability and profits could be found, unlike the unpredictable oil drilling. Samuel Andrews' expertise was instrumental in getting the refinery off the ground. John approached the business of refining with the same precision and strategic mindset that had served him well in the produce commission business. He scrutinized every aspect of the process, looking for ways to cut costs and improve output. His meticulous attention to detail soon paid off, and the refinery began to outperform many of its competitors. By the late 1870s, John's company, now known as Standard Oil, had grown into a formidable force. He had built an intricate network of refineries, pipelines, and distribution channels that allowed Standard Oil to dominate nearly every aspect of the oil industry. John was relentless in his pursuit of efficiency and control. He then negotiated secret deals with railroads to secure transportation rates that were significantly lower than those offered to his competitors, which gave Standard Oil a major advantage. John also employed aggressive tactics to eliminate competition. He would buy out competitors, often offering them a price they could not refuse, and if they resisted, he found ways to drive them out of business. He believed that competition was inefficient and that consolidation was key to success. His goal was to create a monopoly, one company that controlled every aspect of the oil business. Standard Oil's dominance grew rapidly, and by the 1880s it controlled almost all oil refining in the United States. John's influence extended beyond refining. He had sway over railroads, shipping, and distribution networks, giving him unparalleled power over the industry. To his supporters, John was a visionary who brought order to a chaotic industry, creating jobs and making oil products widely available. To his critics, he was a ruthless monopolist who crushed competition and amassed wealth at the expense of others. As Rockefeller's wealth and power grew, so did the scrutiny from the public and government. The Industrial Revolution had brought incredible prosperity to some, yet it also highlighted stark social inequalities. To many Americans, Standard Oil was the embodiment of unchecked corporate greed, and Rockefeller became a symbol of wealth amassed at the expense of fair competition and opportunity. In an age where monopolistic practices were largely unregulated, Standard Oil's dominance was viewed as a direct threat to free enterprise. Public opinion shifted dramatically against Rockefeller, casting him as a robber baron who wielded his influence to control not just the oil industry, but the very structure of American business, while journalists and reformers rallied to expose the dark side of his success. Investigative journalist Ida Tarbell's series, The History of the Standard Oil Company, played a critical role in shaping the public's perception of Rockefeller. Through her work, she unveiled the exploitative practices used to build his empire, solidifying his image as a figure of ruthless ambition. This rising tide of discontent culminated in one of the most significant legal battles of the early 20th century. In 1906, the US government launched an antitrust lawsuit against Standard Oil, accusing it of unfair practices and monopolistic behavior. The case became a turning point in American legal history. In 1911, after years of legal wrangling, the US Supreme Court ruled that Standard Oil be broken up into 34 separate companies. This decision marked a watershed moment, establishing a precedent for government intervention in business and served as the foundation of modern antitrust laws. For many, this was a victory for the average American and a stand against the concentration of corporate power. Despite this legal defeat, Rockefeller's wealth was hardly diminished. The split of Standard Oil into multiple entities inadvertently increased his fortune, as these newly formed companies, including Exxon, Mobil, and Chevron, thrived independently. Rockefeller emerged from the ordeal wealthier than ever, with his reputation as a businessman forever sealed as both a ruthless monopolist and a financial genius. The antitrust case seemed to serve as a catalyst for Rockefeller's shift in focus. In the aftermath, he turned his attention to a new kind of legacy, one that would soften his image and leave a lasting impact on society. Guided by his deepening sense of responsibility, he established the Rockefeller Foundation in 1913, aiming to use his fortune for the betterment of humanity.
Let us go forward, courageously resolved to play our part worthily in building a better world.
Rather than simply donating money, he sought to tackle the root causes of social problems, adopting a strategic approach to philanthropy that was unprecedented at the time. Rockefeller's charitable initiatives were transformative. He funded groundbreaking medical research, leading to cures for diseases such as the hookworm and yellow fever, which had plagued communities for generations. He was instrumental in establishing institutions like the University of Chicago and the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research, now Rockefeller University, each leaving a lasting impact on education and scientific discovery. Unlike many philanthropists of his time, Rockefeller worked closely with experts and scholars, ensuring his contributions addressed fundamental issues rather than merely treating symptoms. However, his shift to philanthropy did not erase the controversies surrounding his business practices. Some critics viewed his generosity as an attempt to buy back public goodwill or to shape his legacy as a benefactor rather than a ruthless capitalist. To them, the Rockefeller Foundation was merely a new form of influence, one that enabled him to exert power over public opinion and institutions. Yet whatever his motives, the impact of his philanthropic work was undeniable. By the end of his life, he had given away over $500 million, an unprecedented sum that in today's terms would amount to billions. Rockefeller's journey from corporate titan to philanthropic visionary highlights the complexity of his legacy. His wealth allowed him to fund lasting improvements in public health and education, yet it was wealth amassed through practices many deemed morally questionable. To his detractors, he remained the embodiment of greed. To his supporters, he was a visionary who ultimately chose to give back. This transformation, driven by both self-interest and a genuine desire to improve society, stands as one of the most enduring paradoxes of his life. As John D. Rockefeller grew older, the world around him changed, but controversy still surrounded his name. Some saw him as a generous philanthropist, while others remembered the ruthless businessman who had monopolized an industry. In his later years, Rockefeller softened, no longer the formidable mogul, but a grandfatherly figure who enjoyed gardening, family, and reflecting on his legacy. To his family, John was more than a magnate. He was a father, a grandfather, a man who had lived with both triumph and turmoil. At his estate, he found peace, escaping the shadows of his past and focusing on the people and causes that mattered most. John's reflections were filled with contradictions. He was proud of his accomplishments, but understood their consequences. He had built an empire that transformed American industry, but his methods were often seen as unethical. His journey from a poor farm boy to the wealthiest man alive demonstrated immense ambition, but came at a significant moral cost. On May 23, 1937, Rockefeller passed away at 97, marking the end of an era.
John D. Rockefeller, who contributed close to $500 million to humanitarian causes, is dead.
His passing drew mixed reactions. Some saw a symbol of corporate greed, others a visionary who used his fortune to benefit society. Rockefeller's story also highlights the complexity of human nature. He was driven by ambition, but also by a belief in hard work and discipline. He achieved unimaginable wealth and recognized the importance of using it for lasting positive change. His journey is a reminder that greatness comes with a price, and the true measure of a person lies in how they use their power for the greater good. Today, Rockefeller is remembered as both a titan of industry and a pioneer of modern philanthropy. His influence shaped the corporate landscape and inspired future philanthropy. If you found his journey inspiring, check out our other videos on iconic figures who left their mark on history. What do you think of Rockefeller's legacy? Ruthless monopolist or visionary philanthropist? Let us know in the comments.